Every single piercing that I have on my body, except for my first earring hole, I've pierced myself. The ones on my ears, I legit used a pin that belonged to my mom's great-grandmother. But then everything else, I used piercing needles on Amazon. And in high school, I went through a phase where I would pierce all my friends' belly buttons, I would pierce my friends' ears, and the occasional nose. Ears and belly buttons were no big deal to me because I did a lot of those in high school. But when it came to noses, I only really did myself and like maybe a few other people. So when people asked me, can you pierce my nose, I would kind of feel a little bit uncomfortable, but you know what? I was still getting paid, so I was like, all right. One day, this girl asked me if I could pierce her nose, and I was like, yeah, sure, come over after school. So she comes over, and we're sitting in my living room, and I go to pierce her nose with the needle, and she starts gushing blood, like squirting blood everywhere, and she was wearing white jeans, and it got all over her jeans and ruined them. Come to find out, she was drinking the night before, but at least she left with her nose pierced.
A little girl made me cry last night. So the coffee shop that I work at also has ice cream. And so this lady had brought in her granddaughter to get ice cream. This little girl's probably about 4 or 5 years old. And she asked for ice cream with sprinkles. And so I absolutely loaded it with sprinkles because she's a kid and I have a heart. And the entire time this girl's eating her ice cream, she just keeps glancing at me. And right before they're about to leave, the grandmother brings her up and says, okay, tell her what you wanted to tell her. The little girl looks up at me and goes, I think you're a princess. And the grandmother goes, tell her why you think that. And the little girl looks up at me and goes, because you remind me of sunshine.
Story time about how I found out that my boyfriend was trying to get with another girl on Valentine's Day. Okay, there's a lot that goes into this story time, so let me break it down for you real quick. I was a sophomore and my boyfriend and I had been dating for about 4 months now. And he was a junior. Well, there was this girl that he was for some reason obsessed with in his Spanish class. She was a freshman, and I know you're probably thinking, oh, well, how did you know he was obsessed with her? Well, he would Snapchat this girl 24/7. Even his friends told me he was obsessed with her. So I talked to him, and I told him I was uncomfortable with how much he was talking to this girl. And he said, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'll block her. Now, I didn't ask him to do that, but it made me feel more confident in how he felt about me. Well, Valentine's Day comes around, and we didn't talk all day until he came to pick me up. I wished him a happy Valentine's Day and got left undelivered. So we get to the restaurants and we decide to put our phones at the end of the table so that way we would be more focused on each other. Well, he goes to the bathroom and then I see this name pop up on his phone. Like for part 2.
My future mother-in-law is the absolute worst person I've ever met in my life. I'm 30 years old and my boyfriend is 31 and we've been together for 8 months. He's the sweetest and most caring man I've ever met in my life, but the biggest surprise is when I met his mother. I'm a natural redhead, so when we sat down for dinner, she asked me if my parents had the same color hair. And then she proceeds to ask me, does the carpet match the drapes? I looked over to my boyfriend who seemed equally as shocked, but he didn't say anything. And when I didn't respond back, she said, don't worry, I'll ask my son about it later. She then went on to attack my appearance and said my hair was too curly and I really needed to learn how to run a brush through my hair and think about my appearance more when I'm out with her son. And when I lost my appetite, she told me it was a good thing that I'm watching what I eat because it would be a shame if I got any bigger. This was my first meeting with this woman, and as soon as I got into my car, I burst into tears until I got home. I told my boyfriend I needed some time. He went into apology overload, and this started by sending me flowers to my office every day and leaving me messages. He said he spoke with his mom and promised this would never happen again. With this reassurance, I decided to give it another chance.
One time I was behind the register at Victoria's Secret. This customer walks in and immediately everybody spots her as a red flag. She's just picking up items, throwing them in her bag, not looking at sizes, not looking at colors. So everybody's like, everyone's on their walkie like, watch this customer, she's coming to the fitting room, she's headed to the cash wrap, somebody get her, check her ID, get her. She has a bag full of stuff, and guess who gets her at the register? Me. So she comes to my register and she dumps out her stuff and we're having a regular conversation. Hi, how are you? Yada, yada, yada. Her total comes up to probably between $700 to $900. It was expensive. My manager is at the register next to me talking to me on the walkie. Ashley, make sure you get that ID. Don't matter what she's using, make sure you get that ID. So I ask her for the ID because she's paying credit. Why do you need to ask for my ID? Just take it, run it. I'm like, no ma'am, I'm sorry, I need your ID for the purchase. She starts to raise her
Part 2 about the girl who was obsessed with me. So like I said, she basically told me that those were her nudes, even though I took the pictures and I knew they were mine. But I was like, okay, whatever, I'm not gonna argue with her. Well, then I get a text from my boyfriend. And he goes, what the fuck, you're so weird, why would you send me somebody else's nudes? And I'm just sitting there like, what the fuck? And I tried to explain to him that I had no fucking clue why this girl was saying they were hers. But then he said that it was weird as fuck and he broke up with me. So like a week later, I see them walking around school together. And my friends tell me that they're now dating. And I really wasn't that mad about it. I was like, okay, maybe that's the only way that she could think of to get a boyfriend. Well, I forgot that my Instagram was logged in on his phone because he had super bad trust issues and wanted to make sure I wasn't cheating on him. So I text him and I'm like, hey, can you take my Instagram off your phone? And I saw that he read my text message, but I got no response. Well, a week later, you guys are never gonna guess what fucking happened. Like,
My client had cheated on me, but it's okay. She won't do it again, no.
Have y'all heard about the David Dobrik situation? No? Well then let me catch you up on it. This is solely for educational purposes, no hate to anyone involved. What's your Instagram handle? By the way, this is a complicated one. Let's head back to 2017 when the Vlog Squad was doing prank videos. This was back in David Dobrik's old apartment, so it was a while ago. But the prank was being held against Seth, who believed he would be kissing Corinna under a scary face mask. The trick was, though, that it was Jason Nash under the face mask. He did not consent to kissing Jason Nash. He only consented to kissing a female. So this is where the first issue arises. For a good 30 to 40 seconds, he was forced to make out with Jason Nash and thought it was a woman. The Vlog Squad also knew that back home, gay men were not accepted. So they knew that there was a good chance he was going to be very uncomfortable with this and that it could cause issues in his future. However, they played the prank on him and he was uncomfortable, but Seth didn't say anything. Let's jump.
So when I was little, my mom took me and my brother to the local pool. I was 12, he was 4. So while my mom and I sunbathed, he played in the kiddie pool. When all of a sudden he comes up to us and says, "Mommy, I gotta go pee-pee." And instead of taking him to the bathroom, my mom said, "Go pee-pee in the pool." Shame on you, Carolyn. We continued to lay out in the sun until all of a sudden we hear everyone scream. Oh my God, some kids peeing in the kiddie pool. Torian didn't understand. And he went over to the kiddie pool, pulled down his pants, and pee-peed like he was peeing. in the toilet. But my mom is clever, and she pretended like she didn't know whose kid it was. And we never went back to that pool again.
This one time I had to stay at my grandma's because my dad was on vacation. And I was having a huge box of clothes come in, and I was not about to have these hoes stolen, so I had my friend stop by to put them inside. So I called my friend up and I was like, hey, can you tell me when you get to my house and let me know when you put the package in? She's like, I got you, shawty. I was like, bet, girl. So around 10 minutes later, I got a call from her freaking out. She was like, Kayla, is there anybody at your house? I was like, no, my dad's on vacation and I'm at my grandma's. She said, no, Kayla, there is somebody at your house right now. So I start freaking out. I'm like, girl, what do you mean? And she said she saw someone walk across this huge window and then my dad's lights turned on. So I start freaking out. I'm like, what did you see walk across the window? Like, who did it look like? And she said it was just a black, tall figure that walked across that window. And around 5 minutes of being on the phone, freaking out, she said my dad's lights turned off again. Eventually, me and my grandma drove by the house to make sure nobody was there, and of course, nobody was in my house. And it only gets worse.
Story time, Tinder edition. Okay, the story blew up on Twitter like a while ago, but I'm just gonna retell it because it's very informational. So there was this guy and this girl, and they met through Tinder, and then they met up and they went on this date. And they were out at dinner, and then she starts not feeling so well. And then she says, I really need to go home. And he says, yeah, I'll drive you home. And she says, okay. So then they get to her house, and then she starts feeling better. So then she says, do you want to come in for some coffee? And then he says, yeah, sure. So they go inside, they have their coffee, and then she doesn't feel well again. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't feel well again. I think you really need to leave. And he's like, okay. And he leaves. And then she goes to bed, and in the middle of the night, she wakes up, and she hears this noise down in her kitchen. And so she locks her door, and she calls the cop. And the 911 operator is just on the other line saying, can you just stay on the line until the cops get there? And then the cops get there, and they're like, the door is locked. Like, we don't think anyone's inside. And she's like, I promise you, someone's inside my house. I can hear them. She says, you have my permission to break down the door. So she's still up in her room, and then she hears the cops break down the door. And then she hears some rustling and some fighting. Hard to...
So when I was 21 and right after I moved out to California, I got my first job interview and I was very excited, but I was trying to look professional and my nails were hideous, so I needed to get them done desperately day before the interview, okay? So I find this random nail salon by my house, and I didn't have like a go-to salon at the time, but I was like, yeah, like let me just go there. I don't need anything crazy. So I go in and talk to the guy at the front. I was like, yeah, I just want some short acrylics with a neutral nail polish, no big deal. And he's like, yeah, okay, I'll help you out. So I follow him to the chair and he starts laying the acrylic and the beads, but guess what he didn't do? He did not smooth them out against the nail, y'all. So I'm watching the acrylic dry in chunky lumps, and I'm like, you know what? No, he's gonna fix it. Like he's gonna fix it with a drill or something. You can't just leave it like that. Guess what? He left it like that, and even had acrylic dry underneath. And while I'm staring at this man in anger and disbelief at the end, you know what he says to me? I'm so sorry. I don't actually work here. I'm just helping out today. Yo!
Extremely toxic best friend story time. So when I was in 8th grade, there was this boy. And this boy would go around telling almost every girl that he liked her. And I was one of those girls. and he would do stuff with all of us. And there were like 11 of us. So we all hated each other. Especially this one girl, and we're gonna call her Abby. And every time we saw each other, we would be super mean to each other. Well, a year passed, we stopped talking to this kid, and I bumped into her at homecoming and basically apologized. So after that, we became best friends. And everything was good until every time I told her about a guy, she would start talking to them. Like this one boy that I was Snapchatting and talking to, she accidentally sent nudes to him and said, "Oh, sorry, I meant to send them to my boyfriend." So then she called one of my other best friends and said, "No, it actually wasn't an accident." And of course he told me because he was my best friend. So I was like, whatever, and stopped talking to the boy. And she did it again, like for part 2.
What's one really bad thing you did as a child that you kept secret for your entire life and didn't tell nobody? I'll go first. I got a lot of stories like this, but this is just one of them. So my mama used to put me in daycare, and in my daycare we used to do field trips, and we went to the YMCA. So while we were in the pool, this one white kid comes up to me. He asked me, like, "Why are you black?" And I was kind of embarrassed, but I wasn't mad at the kid. I was more embarrassed than I was mad. And I told him that my parents painted me every single day. And I was thinking back at the time when I scraped my knee and the skin came off and there was like no blood. It was just bone. But I didn't know that it was bone. I thought that I was just white underneath. So I was like, it's true, like I can peel my skin off and prove it. When I did that, I peeled skin off my finger and it was a lot of skin and I started bleeding really bad. So the water started getting red and the daycare people tried to get everybody out the water like there was something going on. And then once everybody was out of the water, one of the daycare people go, "I'm so sorry, everybody. I lost my tampon. I need to find it." Okay, so what happened was pretty self-explanatory, but I can make a part 2 if you guys want.
This is why you should never go scuba diving in a big group. This is a picture of Tom and Eileen Lonergan, and on January 25th, 1998, they had no idea what was about to happen to them. They wanted the chance to scuba dive in the largest coral reef system in the world. So they set sail with 26 other people and went 25 miles away from the coast of Queensland, Australia, which was their original location. Tom and Eileen only thought they'd be going scuba diving for 40 minutes and they'd come back up and then they'd go back to their hotel. So after about 40 minutes, everybody boards the boat and they go back to Queensland. The next day, another group of divers go out to the same location and one of the divers found dive weights at the bottom of the ocean. They didn't think anything of it until they couldn't find Tom and Eileen. It had been 2 full days until anybody even noticed that they were gone. The people in the group with them just assumed they were out doing stuff or seeing Australia. People wanted to check on them to see if they were okay, so they went to the Lonergans' hotel room and sitting outside of their door was their luggage. And that is when everybody realized they left them behind because it had been 2 days and their luggage was untouched. Running out of time.